joining us today on the 9th episode of the Pivot Posse.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's just have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and everything that we can learn. I'm
All
super
right.
excited, you guys. She's amazing.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Right back at you. I'm really happy to be here. I love what you're doing with the Pivot Posse. I think it's so incredible and such a timely endeavor right now, as I think we've all pivoted in some fashion in the last year or so. So I am a corporate event planner by trade. I've worked in the industry almost 20 years. And last year, as you can imagine, with COVID, that industry came to a screeching halt. And it was pretty evident pretty quickly that that was going to be for a long time, that industry was really going to face some major setbacks. And so it really opened me up to reflect, really sit back and say, okay, like, what am I going to do? Because my industry may never come back the way it even was. And that's kind of what's happening. You know, we're all getting used to this virtual world now. So, you know, what is to come? And so I happened to I started to see on my networking pages that a lot of women were quarantined alone and going through the initial lockdowns alone. I myself am single and was doing the same thing. And so I just kind of instantly connected with these women online and decided to host a one-time girls' night in event. We had a lot of fun. We had some comedians come on and entertain us, and it was great. And then people said, okay, great, are you going to do this next Saturday? And I was like, oh, well, no, like this was like a one-time deal. And people were like, no, this was good. Like, please do it again. So from there, it started to become a weekly Saturday night endeavor. And it was great. We had a lot of fun. And we just kept really starting to build a community from that. Then we started hosting what I like to call learning-based networking events. So there was a topic where you would learn something as part of the event too, like coffees and conversations, lunch and learns, that kind of thing. And
Lunch and learns, I love that.
Yeah. And so it just really grew from there. And I just really had sat back and said, you know what, I think I've got something here. I had always wanted to create a community for single women, that are especially those that are single a little bit later in life. I lost my husband almost 10 years ago. He died by suicide. And, you know, I was in my early 30s. And at a time when that season of life, your friends are getting married, having children, growing their families. I was on a much different journey than they were. So I felt really alone and isolated. And I didn't want anybody else to feel that way. So when this all started to happen, it brought up a lot of those same feelings for me. And, you know, I'd always kind of had in the back of my mind, I'd love to form some kind of community, but I wasn't really sure if people wanted it. I wasn't really sure how to do it. And then, you know, enter the pandemic, and it was like, okay, no, this is what needs to happen. There are a lot of women out there looking to connect. And so that is how the Contemporary Connection was born. I decided to just dive head in and take on this new endeavor.
Yeah, and it is an amazing endeavor. Like, I've gone on there, the events that you have, you know, several events every month. The price point for the year is extremely low for what you offer, for the value that you provide. And then also, like, you said, like, you wanted it, but you weren't sure if anybody else would want it. What made you question that you would be the only one? Right?
Well, I think, like, again, you know, we're all kind of out there going about our business and living life. And you wonder, like, are there other like-minded people like me, or other people having the same challenges as me? And then when it's harder to find those people, then you start to think, well, no, maybe it is just me, or maybe there's very few of us. And like I said, with the pandemic, it made it very clear to me that no, there's a lot of women that are single, or those that want to remain more independent, even if they are in a relationship, and I am not alone. And so it was just creating this space where these women could come together and connect. And I kept the price point low because I didn't want price to be a barrier for anyone. I want anyone that, you know, is looking for that connection to be able to find it and find that community and space where they can feel seen and supported.
That's amazing. And I think that now you really know that you're not alone, because there's definitely women out there that needed this space, that were looking for this space. And for you to have the courage to step up and actually create it has probably helped so many other lives now, right?
Thank you. I mean, I hope so. I've definitely seen a lot of friendships blossom. I've seen, you know, a lot of growth happen. I've seen these women just step up and support each other in different ways. And it's just been a beautiful thing to be able to help create a platform for that, because I think anyone out there, right, that's we're craving connection in some capacity, and
Yeah.
to feel supported.
Yeah. And then let's go back. So you were corporate event planning for 18 years, but it was actually your own business. So when I read it on your website, I originally thought that you were working for a corporation, but you were your own business then for
Well,
18.
both. I did both. So I started off
Okay.
in corporate. I worked for biotech, pharma, and
Doing
medical.
event planning for them.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was really the bulk of my career. It was only up until like the last, actually almost 7 years of my career, that it just so happened that, you know, I went through a layoff, which was very common in those industries because there's a lot of buyouts and mergers. And I just kind of, I don't want to say got lucky, but the company we were transitioning my work to was an outside vendor that this new company used. And they said, hey, like, we would still love to work with you, you know, maybe as a contractor, we don't have a full-time role. And I said, sure, that would be great. You know, that'll be a good transition till I find something. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I'd been in industry so long, I had made a lot of contacts that other people started reaching out to me and said, hey, will you pick up this event? Will you pick up this contract? Will you pick up this project? And I kind of just fell into business, honestly, for myself. I had always wanted to be self-employed doing the event planning, but was terrified to take that on. I was terrified to take the risk. You know, I was working in an industry where I was paid very comfortably,
Yeah.
and so it was hard to ever like say, okay, well, I'm going to take a huge pay cut and take that chance. And so I just honestly, like, it just, everything kind of aligned for me that I was able to finally just kind of move into that, you know, self-employment route.
Okay. Well, wait, Alyssa, it aligned, but it didn't. Like, you got laid off. Okay. So like a lot of people could have taken that in a completely different way than you did. So you had to have some, you know, some initiative and some action and some trust in yourself to actually be like, okay, I got laid off. I do have this one little opportunity, and then let me see what I can do. I mean, don't just count yourself there. Like,
You're right. You're right. I shouldn't. I absolutely shouldn't, because
like
I could
other
have.
people would have been like applying to other jobs perhaps, you know, and you were like, let me just, you had enough confidence maybe, or faith that I'm going to ride this part for a little bit and just see what happens, you know. And
Yeah.
I think that we underplay the importance and the risk that it is of just seeing what happens, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's funny because that's kind of where I'm at right now, right? Like I said, okay, I'm going to take a pause from event planning and start this whole new business. And I'm kind of like, you know, I'm just going to see what's going to happen. I've definitely learned, you know, what's the worst that could happen, you know?
Like, yeah, or what's the best that can happen,
Right.
right? Like,
Exactly.
ask yourself that question. You're going to get amazing answers. And
Yeah.
I do relate because, you know, with well, the first time I left corporate and stuff, it was my choosing, but it took an Achilles snapping to, you know, get me to that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the goal of doing my own thing, right? And it was like, it was going to be like 3 years ahead. But I also needed that kick in the butt as well.
Yeah.
Like okay, no, we're just going to take everything out from underneath you and then we're going to see what you can do, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is kind of funny. Yeah. And I get like, I wonder sometimes, God, I hope I learn from this one and that the next time I have that, like, God, I really want to do this, I don't need a pandemic to come and make me do it.
100%. Yes.
100%. And people will be like, Liz, you were so brave. And I will say that I did handle things well and I did take a lot of brave steps. But that initial step was like, nope, universe is just gonna shove you off the cliff. And then we know the universe knew I was gonna make it, but I was like, no, I think I just kind of want to stay up here.
Right. We want to stay where it's comfortable.
Even if it's a little uncomfortable.
Right.
Right. And then the relationship that you were in with your husband, how did that kind of affect you? And then how did you change after everything that happened?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my husband did die by suicide, and you know, it was a tough relationship. It was, you know, he was a great person, and it was a great relationship, but it had its challenges. You know, he suffered with mental health issues and addiction issues, and it was a narcissistic relationship. And I didn't really even understand what that was until after the fact. I didn't really know what that meant. You know, you hear these terms like narcissism and sociopaths. And I mean, I'll be honest, I like, to me, it's like, I think like a serial killer, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're like all these movie, you know, Hollywood versions of things. And I didn't realize that that's everyday people and that people suffer from these tendencies. And so once I really started to learn and understand that, I really started to understand, you know, kind of how my journey unfolded. I'm somebody that doesn't like to be in the limelight. I am like, I don't like to be the center of attention. And so it served me well to be a part of that relationship. I had always considered myself very independent, and I was, you know, like I quote unquote thought I had things together, you know, like financial, I had the good job. I had, you know, I owned a home and did all of these things very independently of that relationship. But what I didn't realize was it really was taking away some of my power. But I just thought it was good. It served me well because I could kind of hide behind him. He loved to be the center of attention. He was just one of those magnetic personalities that people were drawn to. So it felt like it served me well because I could kind of, you know, fall back behind him. But I started to realize after the fact that I actually was giving away some of my power. So I thought I was being so independent and all these things, but I actually was giving away my power because I, you know, fell into these rhythms with him, and I lacked my own self-worth and my own self-confidence. And again, didn't know that at the time.
Right.
Really understand all of that until later on.
It's weird because you keep on saying served me well. It served me well. And like, sometimes you wonder, what am I being served though?
Right.
You know? And so when that happened, and it had to be just like horrific no matter what, right? I mean, that is a huge loss. And the way that it happened, it's hard to talk about. And I give you so much respect for talking about it, because I also think that there's a stigma around mental health that we need to break down and understand. And that people that have mental health issues, if they had a bandage around their head and they walked around it, maybe we wouldn't look at them in such the way that we do, you know?
I totally agree. And that's why I always say to people, like, it was a tough relationship. There were narcissistic tendencies and there were these not so good parts about it, but there was also some great parts about it. And he was good at his core and he did have a good heart, but there was all these other things, you know, plaguing him that led him to be that way. I don't think there was some huge ill intention of his, but when there was mental health challenges and addiction issues and, you know, the way he grew up in his childhood and that sort of thing, all these things compile for people.
They really do.
Yeah. And for all of us, right? I mean,
it's just the varying levels of it, you know, and also genetically, like what we're predisposed to and things like that as well.
right.
So after that, and then you're what, 31 when that happened, right?
Yes.
And now you're single.
Yes.
In your 30s, which according to Sex and the City is like amazing, but maybe that's just a TV show.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what I kept looking for, right? Like, where are my 3 other single girlfriends and I'm having fabulous nights out and brunches every weekend? Like, that is not reality, right?
And so, and then you were still doing the corporate planning and everything like that.
Yeah.
How long did you really want to try to create this connection?
Yeah, like I said, at first it was probably just more of a little, not fleeting thought, but like not to what it's become today, right? Like I was just, you know, there's like what Meetup and those types of groups out there. Like to me, it was like as simple as that. Like, do I have confidence enough to just put it out there on the internet to say, hey, are there other single women? Do you want to like get together and I don't know, go hiking or something? You know?
Yeah.
I didn't even have the confidence to do that. I mean, I didn't even want to put myself out there in that sense. And so, like I said, it was always these things in the back of my mind, but I was just this is where my lack of self-confidence came in, that I didn't want to put myself out there. And so.
Well, you're also putting yourself out there probably with trying to date, right? So like you're already putting yourself out there again. And now you're like, well, I kind of want to put myself out here with other women like me, but I don't want to get rejected by them either. Like, so like.
100%, right? Like, let me just protect myself. I had just been through a lot of rejection and difficulties in my life. And right, like I didn't want to face it anymore. So it was just easier to not put myself out there, both meeting other friends and in relationships.
Yeah. And so then once you put yourself out there, how did that feel?
It's been just a huge shift in the last year. You know, I've always been willing to share about my story and talk about it to anyone who wants to hear it. But I think I used to feel like it made others uncomfortable for me to talk about it. So I just never did. And, you know, unless somebody brought it up to me. But I've always felt that if I've walked kind of this crazy journey, that I am meant to share it with others and help others through their journeys because, you know, why else? Why else did this all unfold for me this way? I want to do something good with it and I want to help others with it. And so that's really what gave me the drive to say, like, okay, stop playing small. Like, just put this out there because once you start sharing your story and you start speaking more openly about whatever your personal or professional journey is, there is somebody that that's resonating with. And even if
Yeah,
it's,
and they're like creeping out. They're like, "Oh my God, that's me too," you know?
yep, yep. I mean, I just, as part of one of our community events recently, I just shared my story myself and another friend of mine. We're going to be starting actually a podcast soon. And so we decided about sharing your story to inspire others. So we did an event for my group this last month. And once we both opened up and share our stories, I mean, the messages flooded in afterwards and said, I too was in a narcissistic relationship, or I related to you said this, or, I mean, it was crazy after the fact how everybody that showed up to listen in found something that they resonated with in our discussion.
Right? And it just takes people that are courageous enough to actually say it out loud for then the others to then chime in and be like, "I'm okay too, because we are in this together."
Yeah, exactly.
So then what do you think was your biggest pivot? Because you had the pivot from, corporate to yourself to work on your own, then this other pivot from shut down to now online to the contemporary connection. What do you think was your biggest pivot?
I think the biggest pivot was starting this community because it was starting it from the ground up. And I think not putting all like the logistical business stuff aside, it was me putting myself out there. And for me, that was the biggest pivot, I think, is just finding that confidence and just kind of not caring anymore, like what people are going to say, what they're going to judge, like, because I still feel like I'm going to help somebody, and that's more important than anyone that's going to be negative or judge me or have their thoughts about me. That's not important to me anymore. You know, what I want to do is help somebody, and that's really what drove it forward for me to pivot.
Right. And I think that what you said is like really important because some people would think that like you did put yourself out there as far as like, having your own company and stuff. But when it comes to when you need to share your story in order for it to resonate with others, right? That's really putting yourself out there. And that, you are giving a service, but it's a service that you also know that you could benefit from. So for me as a coach and, also as a trainer, it was always like, I have to put myself out there, right? Because I'm selling myself and I'm selling the connection and I'm selling what I can do. It's
Yeah,
not like I'm selling a product and it's vastly different, like inside.
right.
Because then when you get rejections, you could take it like, you're rejecting me,
Oh, yes.
you know? Because it's not like you're rejecting the product that I have to sell you. You're rejecting me. And we know that that's not true, right? We have to know that that's not true, that there's just something about the service that doesn't resonate with them, and that's fine. But you can't deny the fact that in the back of your head, it's kind of like, but this is me, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, and I'll be totally honest. Like, I definitely still struggle with that. I struggle finding the balance in that. And like you said, logically, I know that it's not about me, but it's sometimes hard to disconnect those feelings. And that's definitely something I know I have to work at, on a daily basis as I'm building my business.
Well, yeah, but you also remember everybody that you are helping and everybody that did say yes,
Right.
And like again, as a trainer, like you'd be face to face with somebody trying to help them out, and then they'd be like, no. And then you're like, like that's me. And like, but it's not. It really isn't. It really isn't about you. You have this amazing service. It's just not resonating with them.
Yeah. And maybe just not right at this time, right? Like,
Right. It's not a no for forever. It's just a no right now.
exactly.
Yeah. And then what are like 3 tips that you could give to somebody that's either pivoting or starting their own business?
So for me, I think the biggest thing is we've just kind of touched on this a little bit, but is having the belief in yourself and willing to take the chance and invest in yourself, because that's really what it comes down to. Is, we can let all these thoughts get in our minds, all these fears get in our way. we can create anything to put a roadblock in front of us. But it's really, I really fully believe it comes down to its belief in yourself. Because if you believe in yourself and believe that you can do something or offer something to someone, whether it's yourself in a service or a product, if you have the belief in that, that's what can take you forward. But if you don't have the belief, it's really hard to do anything, I feel, as an entrepreneur.
So, okay, so then you believe that there was something there, but there was still a roadblock within yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still, again, I'll be totally honest. Again, that's something I struggle with on the regular, right? Like you said, it's entrepreneurship is a total roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
look at her. She's like, oh my God, I know.
I've never been on one. So for me to be on this roller coaster is, always interesting, but it's just being willing to do it and to stay the course and to just say, like, again, well, what do you have to lose at this point? But the bigger question is, like, what do you have to gain, and what do others have? What can others gain from you too?
Yeah. And I think that's really important to remember, that it's also about others and what you can do for them, because a lot of times when we just focus on us, it's not enough. But when we remember the impact that we can have on others, it usually boosts us to do more, to push ourselves more, because we are a connected, kind of species or whatever. We do care about others. And so when we know that if I do this, I can probably help a couple more people, it will make you push just a little bit further.
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely believe that. Because it's that, they would talk about your why, like, what is your why, and what's going to carry you through those tougher times and kind of those valleys on that roller coaster. Like, what are going to be those things to drive you forward? And whether it's helping others or, a bigger picture dream that you have for yourself, like, that's where you have to dig, because you're going to need to go back to that when it's, you're not on the high points.
Yeah.
And, I think the big thing is taking imperfect action. So I am, as I say, a recovering perfectionist and, very type A. I mean, that's how I had success in my career. I mean, corporate event planner, you have to be perfect in a sense.
Like to a T. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was ingrained in me. And so that doesn't align with entrepreneurship. You have to just, like, take some imperfect action. And so you just, do your work, do your research, educate yourself, and make steps towards doing the right things, or, making sure you're putting together a product or a service that, is the best you want it to be. But it's never going to be perfect. There is no such thing as perfect, and things are going to change. Things are going to evolve. So just take some action and just put it out there. It doesn't have to stay that way forever. It can always evolve and change and grow with you. But if you don't put anything out there, it's never going to even start.
Nothing happens, right? And Liz Gilbert has, like, that great quote from Big Magic. She's like, perfectionism is just fear in, like, high heels and a black dress or something.
Yes,
like,
yes,
it's just fancy fear. Like,
True. It's true.
Yeah. And when you take off, like, that pearl necklace, and you take that, those shoes off of that perfectionism, and you see it for fear for what it is, it makes it much more digestible somehow,
Yeah.
I love that, though. And then you also said, like, invest in yourself as well. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, whether that's from a financial standpoint to, take a chance on a business. I mean, you can start a business now pretty, inexpensively, but whether that means hiring a coach, I am somebody that's a big believer in coaches. I think it's great to have accountability. I think it's great to have someone to bounce ideas off of, and especially if it's to start a business, whether it's the mindset or more the logistical pieces of business, or both. It's nice to have that partner to help you through, and somebody that maybe has already experienced that or has helped other clients see success. Because, if this is a new world to you, you want that expertise. You want that person in your corner to help you. And at time, I know it can be scary to say, oh, well, I don't want to spend X amount of dollars. I don't have it. I'm just starting a business. But the biggest thing you can do is invest in yourself, find that money, and hire that coach, build that website, hire somebody to help you with social media if that's not your thing, whatever it may be. I know it has to be within reason. I know there's not endless amounts of funds. Believe me, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm a DIYer. I will be very skeptical about things if I have to. But I also know if I'm going to do this, I have to invest, and that essentially means you're investing in yourself.
Right. And understanding that like investing is also saying that like you believe in it, right? It's just another little brick on the belief wall, right? If I'm investing in this, I believe that this is going to happen, and I believe that this is going to make it. Whenever we hold on too tight to things and we're retracting, that's not very good energy, and it's kind of like saying you don't actually believe that it's going to happen, you
Yeah.
know?
Been there.
Yeah. And I remember when I hired my first coach, I was like puking. I was like, I cannot believe that I'm spending this much money a month on this coach, you know. And I was like, but like, I'm a coach. Like, I've gone through like 2 certificate programs. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And then like, I honestly, like, I got my business increased by like 300%, you know. So like, you just kind of have to. And sometimes I don't even know if it matters so much about the service that you get. It's the actual act of you stepping up and investing somehow, some way in what you believe in, because it changes your perspective, and it realigns you with what you really believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. I totally agree, because again, it all comes back to that belief.
Yeah, 100%. And I gotta stop saying that. I say that all the time, 100%. It's horrible.
Me too.
Like, I like watch videos back and I'm like, God, I said it like 4 times in that interview.
I'm usually the person when I speak, so you know, I understand that.
And then the last one is define success.
So for me, this has been interesting, because I've actually in the last year or so really have done some work around this, and for me, it's really changed. For me, success was, I had this different picture of success when I was younger, right? Like, I wanted to climb that corporate ladder. I had this whole, I'm going to have a corner office by the time I'm 30. I'm going to be the big executive.
The shoulder pads, like from like 80s woman, like
was that Working Girl or whatever?
Working Girl, or like The Secret of My Success. It's like seriously like one of my favorite movies of all time.
I watched it. It was like just on a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, it still kind of holds up today.
It totally does.
That's funny. But yes, I have this idea of what quote unquote success was. And then, you know, I was on the trajectory to that. I was working in the corporate world. I was working a ton of hours. I was traveling all the time, and I got burnt out.
Shocker.
And, yeah. But again, when you're, you know, 20 years old in college trying to decide what you're going to do with your life, like, that's what was always, to me, that was what was shared with me. That's what success was going to college and being successful in a corporate job. I didn't know really anything about entrepreneurship. I didn't know that this was like a whole other world. And so I really started to learn, for me, it wasn't about being in the corporate world. It was about freedom, essentially. It was like freedom of my time, freedom of my finances, you know, not being tied to this corporate world where everything else was controlled for me. I wanted to have some of my own control. You know, if I'm going to work hard and I'm going to put in 60 hours a week, I want it to be towards things that I'm passionate about and things that I want to grow, and not doing it for somebody else necessarily.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, and again, the big piece for me is I want to help others. And so, you know, the career I was in didn't necessarily do that. I was creating space for others, and it was creating an environment, and it was a service job, but it was different. You know, I wanted to do something bigger. And so for me, that's what success is now, to be able to have that freedom, to be able to go after these passion projects and really, you know, make an impact in the world.
Yeah. And I'm getting feedback. So I totally agree with that. You know, the entrepreneurship in particular too, I love the fact that you can do what you want, right? And if I mess up, it's okay. Like, I don't have to go to somebody else and be like, hey, so I want to write a blog about this. Do you think that that's okay? Like, you can just like write a blog, I don't know, about like life is not like a Hallmark movie, which I absolutely love that title.
Thank you.
I was like, yes, because it's more like Lifetime. Because when you watch Lifetime movies, man, there's a whole bunch of crap going on.
Yes.
But like, it is true. And you can actually just go out and do what you want to do and try what you want to try, and not have to get a stamp of approval first. And if you fail, you know that you failed trying what you wanted to try.
Right.
Right. So is there anything else you want to let everybody else know here in the group about you, about the Contemporary Connection, about themselves?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I was going to say is, don't wait. If you are having this desire that you want to make a pivot in your life, whether it's changing careers or starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur or doing something in your personal life, don't wait. Life is way too short. I think we've all realized a lot of that in this last year, but it's true. And I know it's like such a cliche statement, but it's true. Like life goes by really quick. And I look back to being 31 now, 10 years later, I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? Like I'm loving it and it's great and it happened when it was supposed to happen. But I just think, what if I had started this, 5 years ago? Where would I be today? And how many more people could I have helped if I had started 5 years ago? But can't live in the past. But I just encourage people, if you're having any kind of inklings at all, just don't wait. Just take the chance on yourself and just go for it, because you never know what good is going to come out of it.
Right. And remember, like you and me both just talked about this. If you don't take the chance when you really want to, the universe is going to like push you off the cliff somehow, some way anyway. And it's going to be a hell of a lot scarier than you doing it yourself.
Yeah,
So
so
take
true.
the chance when you feel that, just do it. Because when you look back 90 years, when you're at 90 or whatever, and you didn't take the chance, you'll always say, I wonder if I took that chance. And it's so much better to say I took that chance and it didn't work out than I wonder if I did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I got to a point in my life that it was scarier to not take the chances than it was to take the chances, because
Yeah.
I was more afraid of the regret of not doing it than what maybe could have happened by doing it.
Awesome. All right. It's been fabulous to have you here. I'm going to take us off of live and then we can stop the live stream. All right.